Absolute great learning. Nice. Shall we move on? Next one, directive spectrum then. This is also an art form almost that's learnt over time and experience. And I came across, I was very fortunate, I came across this when I was very junior, very young. I was suddenly given a small team to manage. I'd never managed people. I was only 22 and I was given 10 people to manage. All right, hold on, I'm only 22. But they nicely, my boss, who was one of the few people I really respected, put me into a little management training, going from technical expert into management. And this was one of the first things I came across, and it was so helpful, so helpful when I was really learning how to deal with people and get people to do work for me. Directive, non-directive, push-pull, very self-explanatory. The secret behind this is to not rely on one style within this spectrum, which again is often what you see of line managers. They're given position, they kind of just stay in that position maturity level. They're constantly giving people monkeys without thinking or being explicit about the monkeys or managing the capacity. And often, let's just say, they just stick with asserting their authority. Because they've been given the position of power, they suddenly become very authoritarian, demand, dictate, just tell people what they need to do. Some circumstances that might work, and actually in some circumstances that might be needed. For something time critical, that's an emergency that just needs to get done. Sometimes there's no time for discussion. You just got to tell people what to do and get them to do it, right? But in everyday scenarios, if you just stay with that one style of telling people what to do, that's not going to work for you all of the time. Being able to move left and right across the spectrum of directive and non-directive is genuinely the best way that you can start to motivate people to get to do stuff for you or work with you or support you. You can start with a clear demand. So for example, we have to get this presentation finished by Friday. It's a clear deadline and I must have your help to do it. Right? That's being very directive. The second thing you can say though is, I know we've got to get it done, but how would you go about doing this? Right? So you give them a bit of direction and then you go completely non-directive and you ask for their suggestion. And then you can go, okay, well, I like that idea. However, perhaps if I can give you this advice, maybe we'll be able to get it done a bit faster. So then you're into persuading. Then you can go, okay, well, what other suggestions have you got? And suddenly you've used the entire spectrum of push-pull, and you will genuinely get completely different reaction to how you go about, encouraging people to help you with getting stuff done. Thoughts, reactions. Do you know people that are very directive, or do you know people that are almost the opposite? They never give direction. They just, try and inspire you to do stuff, but you don't know exactly what you're doing. Give me some feedback or examples.
I must say that when somebody tells me what task I have to do and gives me a deadline, I agree. I find it directive. But when they follow it up with "How would you do it?" It also sounds a bit directive, like giving me even more responsibility, because then they don't follow it up with "Let me give you some advice." It just goes task, how would you do it, and it leaves at that. So it's not followed up with "Let me then give some input." Usually the input comes when it's all done, and then I have to do the whole process again.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's too late, right?
Yeah,
Then
yeah,
it's
yeah.
too late. And I think that's, the secret. If it's just directive, just non-directive, if it's a bit of a half, then it leaves the person you're asking a little bit at an end, and they're not clear on what they necessarily need to do. So absolutely, I've come across that many times. Or they do the pretending. There's maybe another discussion at another time, but they give you the directive, they pretend to want to get your input, and usually you can tell, right, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then they go straight back to the directive again, because they've been on a management course and they've been told that they should be more coaching style, right, or something like that. You can pick up when somebody is not being genuine or
Yeah.
authentic around what they're asking you to do.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good. Other examples, feedback.
Well, I think that you can use the non-directive method if you're working with more experienced people who can actually, have their own ideas and, make some, creative contribution to the resolving of the task. And if you have like a more junior team, you should give like more directive suggestions or anything, because in that case, and especially if you have like a young team, in terms of how long they are working together, I mean, it's hard to make the team work if you don't have like if you don't give your guidance or anything. So yeah, it really depends on the seniority of the team and the people in it.
Very beautiful comment. Understanding a bit also the context really helps, and we will actually in another session start to talk about situational leadership as well. Very similar to the way that you mentioned it. What is the capability of the person that I'm asking to do a piece of work? You're right, if the capability is really low, you do have to give them more instruction. It's just natural, right? As the people you're working with get more capable, the more that you can completely delegate how they do it, in terms of then the style that you use to lead them. Absolutely. Very, very good. Any other comments before we move on to last two topics for today? Then different kind of modes. I mean, there are so many different leadership models. What I'm always going to try and do is link them and use the most simplest ones for learning purposes. Some of the different models are very complex, and you can get up to 52 different kind of types of leaders and all that kind of good stuff. And you often have some really deep neuroscience and psychology behind them nowadays, and are often tested across millions of people. So some of the models are really useful and can genuinely help leaders develop over time. So any chance that you get to do these kind of 360-degree feedback things where you get some input, they can be super helpful in evolving and improving your capabilities and experience over time, so that your career gets better and better and better, and you can adapt to more and more different situations easily. So here's one particular model. Again, it's kind of a generalization of many different models. Operational leader, strategic leader, forceful leader, enabling leader. Here's a test for you. Which communication preferences, remember we did the communication preferences, creative, logical, procedural, interpersonal. Which communication preferences do you think match operational leader? Let's start with that.
Procedural, maybe.
Oh, bang on. You are correct. Procedural. Well done. Top marks. Did somebody else want to join the call? Did I hear a little ping? No. Yeah, absolutely. Operational is the procedural preference underneath it. You know, they're all kind of linked. How about the enabling leader?
Yeah, interpersonal maybe.
Of course, interpersonal. Strategic leader?
Is the enabling leader also creative?
Aha. Now, yeah, hold that thought. We'll come back to that thought in just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, strategic leader then. That might be a giveaway.
I would put creative there.
Exactly. Creative. It's the innovation, it's the
Yeah.
growth, it's the
Sure.
future that you. And then finally, the forceful.
I don't want to say it.
Yeah, it's more the logical side of it. It's the facts, taking charge, clear in where you want to go. I mean, forceful is maybe a strong word in this context, but it certainly has those assertive overtones. So to your point on can enabling also be creative? If you remember in the model, I had 2 on the right-hand side of the brain, 2 on the left-hand side of the brain. So these are connected, of course. So strategic and interpersonal are right brain preferences. We know this from the neuroscience now. And that can then contain the creative and the interpersonal. So often you find people have a right brain preference, both the creative and the interpersonal. Same then for the left-hand side, we have the logical and the procedural. Often people might have a left-handed brain preference as well, so they're very logical and very procedural. So you're right. So sometimes these things are connected, or they can be strategic and forceful because they're creative and logical, or operational and interpersonal because they're procedural and interpersonal, enabling, sorry. Absolutely.